about depression last time, and this time I want to talk about fear. I want to focus more on fear, because I believe that fear is really the underlying, the underpinning of our stress and anxiety. And we feel fear every day for one reason or another. Our society is definitely geared towards fear. It becomes our identity, and it's amplified by the culture that we're in. You turn on the news, you turn on the TV, and all you see is a lot of fear thoughts out there about the economy and the future, where we're going to go, and there's not enough oil, and there's not enough food and things like that. So it's very common for us to experience fear. It's also most of the fear that we experience on a day-to-day basis is personal fear. How I'm going to fall short. I won't be prepared. I'm going to be rejected. What are they going to think about me? Something won't get done. I won't be prepared for the future. I'm going to drop the ball, and somewhere around the corner, it's all going to explode, something like that. How are people going to look at me, and what will they think of me at that point? So something's going to go wrong, and it usually has to do with me, something I didn't do, something I didn't finish, or I couldn't prepare for, or, something along those lines. So we worry about finances, our relationships, our careers, our jobs, school, and preparing for the future. And when we do that, we begin to feel separate and alone. I had one of my teacher trainers in the last session, and she talked about going through her divorce. And so as she's telling me the story, and she's like, I had nowhere to turn. I didn't tell anyone what was going on. And, she told a story like that, and it triggered in me, because when I went through my divorce, it was the exact same thing. It was, Rima and David. And so when their problems arose, I didn't tell anyone, because I was like, oh no one will understand. I'm the only one ever to go through a divorce, things like that. So we tend to separate ourselves, and we feel alone, we feel afraid, we feel embarrassed. Oh, I'm having money issues. I can't pay the bills. I can't pay the mortgage. I owe for this, something like that. And so we close off. And we feel separate. And when we do that, we start to stimulate different hormones and things in our bodies, because that's how the anxiety starts to set in. We start to feel alone, we start to feel all by ourselves, and we go through hormonal changes in our body. So what I really want to focus on today is this trance. We get into this trance of fear and what that does to us, and then how we can develop a strategy to maybe overcome that. And I mention it, I refer to it as a trance, because it really is a trance. When we become fearful, or we become anxious, think of the last time that you were overwhelmed, you were anxious about something, you're trying to get something done, your day is full, what's going on? Your mind starts being busy with thoughts. This is going to happen, that's going to happen, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And then if I don't get this, if I don't get to dry cleaners, all that, your mind starts going. Your heart rate may start to increase. Maybe you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach. Maybe you get a little jittery. Your palms may sweat. Your body tightens up. You're definitely not loose and relaxed like we were on the beaches of Jamaica. You're not feeling that at all at that time. Your digestion closes off. Sometimes, and there's different responses. A lot of times we don't eat. We can't digest. We don't even think about food. And then later on we're like, oh shoot, Or we, maybe, depending on how we're feeling, that maybe that is one of the comfort things that we go to. But that's after the trigger. Our blood pressure rises, our mind contracts, our body tightens. So we're in a trance. And what we do is we see the world through that lens, through the lens of the trance. And through that fear trance, the world becomes very narrow and very small. And what happens then is that we tend not to see all of the other things that are going on. It's hard to be grateful. It's hard to look around and see hope. It's hard to be happy in those moments, because our vision, our view of the world is very narrow at the time. Now, Fear is not all bad. The function of fear is to keep us safe. So it's not all bad. Okay? So we're wired, to protect ourselves. We have this little almond-shaped part at the back of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala, what it's doing is, have you ever been to the airport and you see, like, especially now since 9/11, when you drive up to Ontario, you'll see orange alert, or yellow alert, or red alert. So that's what the amygdala does. The amygdala is always on alert. It is wired to always look for danger or threat to us. And we've been wired like that since back in the caveman era. However, we usually are not having like some sort of saber-toothed tiger running after us. Our lives are usually not in danger on an everyday basis. And yet we trigger the amygdala 50 to 100 times a day. Okay? And I'll tell you a little bit about that. So we're wired to do that. And fear is an anticipation of what's going to go wrong. So when the amygdala gets triggered, it takes us into this fight-flight response. Okay? When we go into the fight-flight response, the sympathetic nervous system is turned on. The parasympathetic is turned off. The parasympathetic system is your relaxation system. It is your, everything is going fine, your 5 senses are working, your digestive system is working fine. Our body has the ability to heal itself. It can do, there's a book that I read and subscribe to and everything. It's called There's No Incurable Illnesses. There's No Incurable Diseases. Dr. Schultz puts it out. I didn't bring it today. And so your body can fight aging, it can fight cancer, it can do all these wonderful things when it's in the parasympathetic state. But we don't keep it there. We're usually in that sympathetic state, we're in that fight-flight response. That fight-flight response, while it's triggered and while it's designed to help us out, it should only last about 90 seconds. If you watch animals, I love like the Discovery Channel or History Channel, and you watch, and sometimes you have, you're on safari and you're watching, do you need paper? Is that what you're looking around for? Okay. And you watch the lions and they're chasing the antelope and things like that, and okay, it's like all exciting and antelopes are running wild. And remember Simba and Lion King? Was it the wildebeest stampede? That's right, they triggered the wildebeest stampede. But once the lion gets the slowest, probably the oldest antelope, all the antelopes go back to grazing. They're like, okay, threat is over. They go back to grazing. They don't stand around and say, he's not going to get me, and I'm going to outrun you, and he's in it. They don't stand around and they trigger and trigger and trigger. They let it go. We don't let it go. We hold on to it. There's a quote by Mark Twain, and he says, "The worst things in my life never actually happened." There is this author of this book, Mind Over Medicine, Melissa Rankin, and I'll be quoting from her book quite a bit today. She's on her way to do a lecture, and she's in another city. She's traveling by herself. She's staying with a friend. Her friend lets her use the car, and she's driving towards this lecture to do her lecture. It's winter time. She slips, and loses control of the car, falls in a ditch. Her amygdala takes over. You can imagine. She's triggered. She's in fight or flight. Okay? Car falls in a ditch. She looks around. Everything's okay. The car's kind of banged up a little bit, but she's okay. Everything's great. Now, the fight or flight response is done. But we don't let it be done. We re-trigger it with our own thoughts and emotions. Oh shoot, I'm in my friend's car. I just jacked up her car. I don't have my AAA card. I don't have my full wallet. My husband is at a conference. I can't even call him. I'm going to be late for this talk. And you go on and on and on, and you trigger it. Each one of these thoughts we have re-triggers, 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 over and over again. And that's what we do. That is how we respond. And so we stay there in that fight or flight response for the better part of each of our days. Repetitive triggering of that amygdala makes it hypersensitive. It not only is responsible for triggering the fight-flight response, it remembers emotions. it stores